All right, everyone, thanks for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to introduce Jeff Piontek with the session titled STEM to STEAM to Stream, using augmented and virtual reality in the classroom. We're really excited to have you here, Jeff. Thanks for joining us. And I just want to give a quick shout out to ClassFlow. Thank you so much for being the sounding sponsor of this event. We've had a really full and exciting day. And of course, thanks to Blackboard for this great platform. All right, so you guys must all be pros at this by now. If you go ahead and grab the pointer icon, it's the second tool down on your toolbar. Point to where you're from, and go ahead and type in the chat too where you're at, or where you'd like to be. We've got Peggy in Phoenix. I know it's hot there. Got New England. I am in North Carolina. Idaho. Excellent. Someone in Texas. Is that you, Jeff? All right, great. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to move on here and let Jeff take it away. And just go ahead and click on your talk button one more time there, Jeff.
There it goes. It's great for everyone to be here. And of course, I clicked the talk button twice, so you couldn't hear me when I first thanked everyone for being here, whether it be the afternoon or the evening, depending upon where you are. For me, it's early afternoon. I'm actually in Honolulu, Hawaii right now. So if you guys want to wish you were here, it's about 82 degrees, 83 degrees pretty much every day. Background on me, if you don't know much about me, started out as a classroom teacher, South Bronx, and was fortunate enough to work my way up the food chain in New York City through the bureaucracy to be the head of Instructional and Informational Technology for the City of New York, Department of Education. Worked in Hawaii for a couple of years building STEM programs as the head of science. Then opened up a charter school, worked there for about 3.5 years. In the last couple of years, I've been doing consulting work all over the country, all over the world, focused around STEM, but taking it one step further, integrating it to STEAM, and then now what we call STREAM. And my application of STREAM is actually, we started with a preschool. So if you can imagine that, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And Peggy, yes, the charter school was in Hawaii. So I'll talk more about the school, about the experiences and things like that as well. So looking at augmented reality, people don't understand exactly what augmented reality is. They understand it to a certain extent, but when you start making the applications to education and you're actually looking at what you're trying to accomplish in education, you realize that it's a totally different schematic than what you're actually used to. And I'm not going to go through and read the slides for you. I think it's disrespectful, and I think that you guys can all do that at some other time if you want to. Now, one of the things we're looking at here is that you're looking at the reality and virtuality continuum. So people have augmented reality, and then they have virtual environments or augmented virtuality. And then you have the real world. You know, one of the things that people started jumping on years ago was Second Life. I don't know how many of you actually created accounts in Second Life. My name was Benny Benjamin, and I flew around. I had wings. It was the strangest place I ever was, and it didn't really take off that well in education. There were some people like Stephen Harris in Australia who did some great things in New South Wales, Australia. He built a whole campus where he actually held campus courses, and you could attend as a student, a high school student, either online in Second Life or in the classroom physically. The problem I saw a lot of with Second Life, and this is why we went to the program that we're using now, is that Second Life, you were limited in what you could possibly do. So you couldn't actually do things like walk into water and see, you know, what was going on. It's not easily manipulated, and it's a great thing that Jackie just put in there. It wasn't controlled by your mouse, and it wasn't controlled by the way you actually would put your keys. So it wasn't game ready for kids to be utilizing it as well. And that's one of the issues we saw. So when you looked at augmented reality and virtual reality, we wanted to see if there was a possible way that we can create an environment that was photoreal and you can do all the things in it that you could possibly do in a normal environment of a real world. And we always kid around about, you need to have a first life before you have a second life, and you have to do things in the, the real world as well. So the continuum you're looking at here is actually fully virtual environment, is full immersion. On the left hand of the spectrum, if you're looking at the slide, is the real environment where you actually work with blueprints and schematics. And if you look at the middle, you have some mixed methods in between of those two. The problem is, how do you find a way to implement this in your classroom and actually utilize it to make kids get engaged, right? And then actually have them creating things. Because that's what it's all about. It's providing the skills the kids need to be necessary that they can either turn it into something they're passionate about, where they can follow in college and in professional career after that, or something that how they can then take that to use it to drive their education for other things. And that's one of the biggest things. It's true. Drew Minnock, Brad, and Aaron Klein are all passionate about it. There's so many people. Those are the two guys in an iPad, if you've never seen them, or two guys in a bunch of iPads is what that thing is called. And people don't realize that, and this is partially from the work that they did, as well as two people named Deach and Went that are from universities down in Tennessee and Florida that do a bunch of stuff in higher education utilizing virtual and augmented reality. But for us, if you're looking at the screen here, we didn't realize that augmented reality, the line that we have in football games is one of the forms of augmented reality. Concerts that we have now, when you can actually have Michael Jackson or whoever. I was fortunate enough that I actually saw a hologram in one of the concerts I attended, and it's amazing because if you're far enough away from the stage, you can't see it, And the thing about it is that it will engage certain kids that want to learn about it. Wombomania on the left-hand side is very similar to other apps that are out there in augmented reality, similar to like the Butterflies app and the Snowflake app, and some of those I'll talk about. And actually, after the session, I'll post everything on my website, which is my name, jeffpiontek.com, and I'll put all the links up there to the websites and the things that I reference in here. And the coolest thing about it is you can just hold up the screen on your iPad or your phone. You can actually then show whatever it is, your face or anything else like that. And utilize it where you have snow or something for a kid that didn't understand snow. And I'm looking at it's funny, I'm looking at the comments, and you know what? I was the same way that you were. I didn't believe about augmented reality being something that's more than just bells and whistles. But let me show you when we go through this, and we'll see if I could change your mind at the end, or at least delay your skepticism a little bit. Now, we know that we can actually use scenarios for medical applications. So you can actually have people test utilizing the tools that they're going to use in the real world on a virtual environment, or some of those things that we're actually looking at now with a scalpel, before they actually go and accidentally cut someone in the wrong place and cut through something that's not there. So visualizations, you can actually look at molecules that are either too dangerous to deal with in a regular environment, or something you can't see in a 3D world. On the bottom right-hand picture, you're looking at two people with goggles on that actually allow you to see a virtual environment of something that's there of a molecule or some molecular structure. When you look at the technicians, right, and I'm going to show you a video about BMW later on, which is the coolest thing I've seen, and this is one of the applications that becomes a real-world application, and why I think this is great for our kids to learn about it, is if you're looking at a technician, they can see what the aspects are of what they're trying to work on. So an expert technician comes in, puts on something, and Google Glass is working on this now. So they're coming out with more and more applications that you can actually utilize to see different things and uses of augmented reality in the real world. This is the coolest thing. So your phone, you're walking down the street, you pull it up, and actually with icons that they have markers on, you can actually pull up all of the different things you're looking at. So you can be walking down the street and see everything you're going to be able to see. And this someday will be on a lens, like Ray Kurzweil proposes, that it'll be on a lens, and you can actually see what's going on. And it's true, you become your own personal tour guide. But the coolest thing about that is, imagine hypothetically you go to a place like Honolulu, right, Hawaii. I don't know how many of you have ever been there. I've been blessed to live here for the last 10 years. But the greatest thing about it is, if I could put on a clear contact lens and be able to have my own personal tour guide that I programmed prior to coming to Hawaii, saying I want to see The North Shore, I want to see where they do the big surf contests on the North Shore. I want to see Arena, where they have the golf tournaments, or Turtle Bay, where the golf tournaments are. And I want to see Pearl Harbor as well as Waikiki Beach. It can actually navigate, hypothetically in the future, that you can actually see it and go to those places and actually have that, so you can actually, come as time goes on to those different environments, and going to places like Europe and seeing things like what the ruins looked like possibly, 100 or 200 years ago when the building stood there, and that's no longer there. So it's an amazing application that's coming in the future. And let me see if I can pop this open here quickly. This is one of the applications that utilizing it here. And let's see. So anybody that's ever traveled, right? And this is in Europe. And I'll show you quick. So one of the things we're looking at on here is, imagine if you go and, I grew up in New York City, if you can't tell, I'm a Brooklyn, I have a Brooklyn accent and haven't lost it. The subway is daunting for many people. If you have an app and you're walking on the street and you're trying to find out what subway station can bring you to one place or another, this is a great app. They haven't applied it to New York yet. It's still just for use in London. And it will have an application. If you think about it, that's almost 5 years ago that they came out with the app. They've updated it a couple of times, and it's getting there. Funny, somebody wrote use a cab. I think you take your life in your hands when you get in some of the cabs, though, in New York City still. It's definitely not safe. All right, now this is looking at the applications of this. If you have it on your phone, you can see what's going on. This is an application that they put in as if it was in New York City. Using Google Maps and MapQuest, they're actually putting on here all of the different aspects that you could possibly use it for. And I know it's a little bit overwhelming and not truly applicable at this point, but as time goes on and we actually figure out ways to implement this into our phones, or to pull it up in our glasses, or some other way that it could be actually projected onto our screens in our cars, this will be what we're looking at. So you have nearest apps, Wiki2 driver, and then a location where things are. Tell you where Yelp. So if you're a Yelp member, by your Yelp account, it can actually give you customized different things as well, which are there in Yelp. Lonely Planet as well, and you're looking at app reviews of everything that's available. And it's amazing. It's just an overlay of the Google Maps or of the other things that you would actually have on your phone, telling you what's available and what's not. I was fortunate enough years ago to see a program that it hasn't come out yet, and I actually had to sign a non-disclosure when I worked for the state. They were working with the military at the university here, developing overlays onto Google Maps. So if you can imagine, Google Maps and Google Earth has overlays that are like 700 or 900 overlays that you can pull up buildings, places to go, and things like that. This one had every newspaper in the world that was published that day, every TV station that was being broadcasted live that was open for access. So it was amazing to see where things were going, and this is 7 or 8 years ago now, and I can imagine where they are today with it. So looking at geoinformational services and things like that, it's really, really cool. It's just there, like Peggy wrote, the content pops up for you, and it's something that as you're driving by, in which you'll be able to control what pops up and what doesn't pop up. So it's amazing to see those things, and then obviously different gaming, and gaming is a huge thing, and that's a whole other topic, and I'll talk a little about how gaming plays into what we did and what we do. Commercial applications of AR on your screen in a dark night, you can actually see, because it'll give you better night vision, okay? And you're looking at the night vision. I don't know if anybody's ever hit a deer. I've been unfortunate enough to actually hit a deer in my life in my parents' house upstate New York. And one of those things that you don't see it until it's too late a lot of times. And it's something that you could see here in the future, or a person or a kid on a bike or any of those things, that it would actually give you better vision at night. Military applications are huge, and that's going to actually drive a lot of what happens here for augmented and virtual reality. The military obviously has the money to do the research and different things like that. So but there are a lot of problems. The tools are not there yet, and a lot of them are cumbersome, and a lot of them don't work for most of us. And it's looking at things that just really, truly don't work for us, and some of them they will. All right, mobile learning and augmented reality in the classroom. So we're looking at this. Obviously, the planets is one simple way, the solar system, and there are a bunch of different apps that actually are good for that. There's one that's put out by NASA, and it's called Spacecraft 3D, and it has you can actually download it, and it has an app that you can actually download and then look at what's available for students to see with the space, all the planets and different things like that. On the bottom right, you see different buildings, and I'm going to show you what you can utilize this for, is that you can actually look at what buildings looked at over time, because you can have an overlay of what the view was of that building in the 1800s, in the 1700s, 1600s. If the building ever got destroyed and was rebuilt, you can actually have that. As long as there's data that's existing, the overlays allow us to see those different things. It also allows you to do multiple things now in environments, walking into museums and doing a virtual tour of a museum, right? If you're never going to make it to a place like China and a garden, right? So you're looking at learning Mandarin, and this is one of the programs that we worked on when I was at the school in Hawaii, the charter school that I started, and I was the head of the school, and I built it from 200 students with my teachers up to 1,200 students in 3 years. The fourth year, I ended up leaving the school, and what we did was we actually built a virtual world where we actually communicated with kids in China. And our kids all had avatars, and they were able to communicate in English with kids that were communicating in China when our kids were taking Mandarin. So we were actually able to have our kids communicate with them. And this is one of the things that I believe puts our kids in a safe environment. They have an avatar. It's not their picture. It's not their face. It's not their name. They have an account that was created by the teacher. And it actually helps our kids to understand exactly what they're trying to do. There's no doubt that, when you start building these things, it's going to be something that takes it. And this is why I believe it's important. When you start looking at the digital divide, and it truly is, wealthy kids have laptops, poor kids have cell phones. A lot of the stuff that we're doing here, and I actually sit on the Special Interest Group for Mobile Learning for ISTE, and I've been on it for many years with Kathy Norris and Elliot Soloway. And the best thing about it is everybody has cell phones now. You're looking at, 72% of the kids in the country have cell phones or access to a cell phone. You can actually now utilize the tools because they're being created for kids to be able to, all the environments are being created for a handheld device, whether it be an iPad or a phone. And that's one of the things that we're looking at. And Peggy, I'll ask you a question, or Jackie, I'll ask you a question in a second here about what we actually utilize the virtual environment. So some K-12 ideas. We can actually use cell phones for SMSs, text and Twitter and things like that for short learning, for kids to learn specific things. Simple quizzes, mobile LMS. Nobody's got there yet. I haven't seen it, that anyone's been there yet with a mobile LMS that's really functional and really works. You have some companies that are getting there, but it's still not really functional for an iPhone or for a Droid. Maybe for some of the bigger ones that they have out now on the Droid side or the Windows side, but definitely on an iPhone, I couldn't use an LMS. It's just not big enough. And then mobile books and mobile learning through phones, it's a different skill set. So when you look at kids that are actually doing things, this is what I talked about a little bit, and you have, an apps for Museum 2.0. Imagine walking into a museum, carrying your phone, and actually having kids be able to go around and have a virtual tour where it actually talks to them. So instead of those sheets that a lot of teachers used to give their kids, they go through these environments now and they're able to look at and see what's exactly going on. And looking at something like a Barosaurus or looking at a Stegosaurus, you can actually then pick it up, look at it. It has an embedded augmented reality trigger in it, and then the kids can actually then see exactly what it's like. So Museum 2.0 is one of the cool ways. So we started working on a program that actually is called a 3Dpedia. So it's actually going to be tied into Wikipedia hopefully someday, that will give you 3D emulated versions of what things are like, and you can actually utilize your phone or your iPad or your computer to see it. So this is where it's going in my mentality. This is why I talked about the historic buildings. And if I can get this up here quickly. So going to places, you know, like Europe, when I got to visit Europe, you know, you're looking at things that are there, and you're looking at it from what it seems like and what it looks like. But imagine if you could look at it what it looks like now, 100 years ago, when that building got burned down, you know, when the White House was destroyed, or things like that. When you're going through museum exhibits, when you have pictures, and you can utilize those different things as well. There's a program called Aurasma, A-U-R-A-S-M-A, and that'll be one of the things I put up as well. And it's pretty cool because if you can look at Aurasma, you can see these different things, and you can have overlays of pictures in your classroom that you can link to, hyperlink to videos, and it's really straightforward. There's a new one that came out called Daqri, D-A-Q-U-R-I, and I'll put all these up on the website afterwards, where they're actually doing more and more with, they call it 4D, because you can actually then manipulate it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that within the virtual environment. So it's pretty cool when you have these things that you can actually see in other places that you never had the opportunity to see before, and they come alive to our kids. You know, and it's pretty amazing when you're actually able to see these things. Right? What about the U.S.? I talked about China, what we're doing with them, right? This is what we started doing. There's a place in Hawaii called the Bishop Museum, and most of you have heard of the American Museum of Natural History in Hawaii. And we've actually been fortunate enough to actually work with the Museum of Natural History in Hawaii and the Bishop Museum. In the Bishop Museum, we built a virtual environment. So if you ever get to visit Hawaii, you can actually walk into the Bishop Museum, go downstairs. There's a 12 by 18-foot wall that students get to engage with. And it's actually, you're able to go underneath the sea as if you're a diver and actually look for fish and see what fish are around in underneath 300 feet. This is one of the things we did, and this is the program we use. It's called Blue Mars. So now if you're looking at this, this is what Hawaii looked like 100 years ago. The reason we got started on this project is we actually worked with a video game programmer named Hank Rogers. He's not a programmer. He actually owned a company called Tetris. So we were fortunate enough to see this created. But if you go back, and I'm actually going to stop the video while it's playing, and every plant that's in here, our kids took a picture of, rendered it in a 2D program, an art program, and then we actually were fortunate enough to have a license for what's called the Crytek engine. And utilizing the Crytek engine, we took the 2D pictures that our kids had drawn and colored and made and rendered them into 3D real-world pictures and plants and things like that. And this is on my Jeff Piontek. It's on a YouTube channel that I have, and you can actually see some of the stuff that the kids have actually done. And to me, it was truly amazing because you really did then apply the true application of the art integrated with the science. And then you can actually see as you're going up here that every one of these, and all they did was replicate what it looked like and took the pictures that may have been available and then rendered them into the 3D world. You know, and it's true. Peggy said, think of all the things we can experience that we never experienced firsthand. But Peggy, we'll take this one step further. How about Hawaii being overpopulated now? It's actually being overdeveloped. We have 8 new buildings going up that are above 40 stories that are going to be built in the next 5 years. If anybody's ever been here, the traffic is already outrageous. They're trying to build a rail system. But imagine what it looked like 100 years ago. Our kids will never know that. We don't even know that, even looking at our pictures. So we took it one step further, and we're able to do this and to see what was going on for our kids. And it was amazing to see what they were able to do. And our kids are able to create a virtual environment of what Hawaii looked like a long time ago. And culturally, and these are just snapshots of those screenshots. Now, this is where we take it one step further, right? And we actually are able to see underwater and to swim around under the water where you can't do this in Second Life. And we took this with a project with NOAA, and as you're under the water, as a scuba diver, you can see just the lens of the glass. You can actually reach out and point toward a fish. Now, I'm a science teacher by trade, And imagine the ability for a kid to look at this, point at a fish, and find out its L50, his lifespan and his reproductive life. Look at the species of fish, whether it's an endangered species or not, where it actually lives. So for students that'll never get out of places like I started in the South Bronx, it gives them an opportunity to see the world through another lens that they'll never or may never get to experience in their lifetimes. Or for ecosystems that will not exist in their lifetimes. So it's photoreal if you look at the fish here. So this fish was actually rendered, drawn, and then actually put into the Piontek engine and rendered into a 3D world by our students, middle school, high school students. Now, mind you, this is a project that took place over a couple of years. It's still going. Unfortunately, when I left the school, they canceled the contract that we had with the university. And the university had students that were coming from, it's Crytek, let me put this down here, C-R-Y-T-E-K engine. So if you just Google Crytek engine, it's the one they use to make all the movies in Hollywood. It's $1 million for a license. But people don't realize that if you ask most of these people very nicely, and you tell them I'm an education institution, and you prove to them what you're trying to do, right? They actually give you a sub-license for free. So we actually had a licensed piece of software that was $1 million license in our school being used for free. So if you look at it, you can actually see what it's being done. So anytime you can ask a company like that and it's something cool, they're going to be, looking to help kids, especially if it prepares their kids for them and for the workforce that they're looking for. They're looking for creative kids that already have these skills. Imagine if you start a middle school kid on this, and he actually is really talented artistically, and he learns enough of the programming that he can do this. Out of high school, the kid can make 6 figures because he'll be able to walk into a job working in a virtual environment or an augmented environment, with a company like that. The partnership I spoke about was for the Academy for Creative Media at the University of Hawaii. And the University of Hawaii actually allowed us to have students that came in, and it was amazing for these kids to come in at 22, 23 years old that are getting their graduate degree in either 3D animation, 2D animation, 2D game design, or something to that extent. And having the kids then learn from these other kids that are their near peers. And they got 3 credits for doing it as an internship, but we got the expertise from these kids that already they're working with industry standard materials. And that's what guided this program so much. We worked with a person named Mark Lockridge from a company called Creative Academies. So the program we did at Bishop Museum, we actually ran a summer program at the Museum of Natural History in Hawaii. And the coolest thing about it is we sent our students, an 8th grade student and one of our high school students, to New York City to teach the class. So they went there with their parents, and one went with his dad, the other one actually went with one of our coaches as his mentor and his chaperone, and they actually taught the kids, 40 kids in New York City. So we had to look at this in virtual environments and actually manipulate in a virtual world. And we actually did locomotion. We did, I just blanked on what it's called, when you actually can hide within an environment. I just blanked on what it was called. But we actually, in a week, were able to teach these kids camouflage. Thank you, Jackie. Camouflage of animals in virtual environments as well, and how they can actually change based upon and hide in those things. It was amazing to see the authentic learning that took place from the kids and how the programs went from there. And the funny thing is, we did this with the Museum of Natural History, and then the next year after that, they decided that they didn't need us to do it any longer, and they tried to run the program by themselves, and it didn't run so well. So we're back in conversations to actually, sometime do this with them again in the future. The next slide is looking at the introduction to the Blue Mars 3D program, and that's what it's actually called, Blue Mars. Right, it says, well, aloha, welcome to our humble village. Right now they're having the Makahiki Festival in honor of the god Lono, right, the god of fertility and music. So our kids actually took this and rendered all of these things within the 3D environment. Right? If you see some of the programming comes up at the end, so they're still working on different things within that environment. And then they had our other kids took it to the next phase, and they built things like coconuts, because Hawaii is famous for coconuts and pineapples, right? But the reason that they did this is because if you look at the coconuts that they used, it's a game called Ula Maika. And Ula Maika was a game that the ancient Hawaiians used that was similar to bowling. and they rolled the coconut between the two sticks, right? And those two sticks that they had there, you had to go through, and if you did, you got a point. Our kids started building games that existed, and if anyone's ever been to Hawaii and visited the Polynesian Cultural Center, you get to play those games. But you're building the cultural aspects of it, but the coolest thing is you can't defy physics. So our kids had to learn all of the physics that went into rolling a coconut and putting a coconut into that environment. You know, and these are different things. You know, you get to go and pick up a coconut in the environment as well. So I'm actually putting another link up here as well. So you can go over, pick up a coconut and find a coconut. That was another game they played to try to go and find as many coconuts as they possibly could. And these are all of the things that were done in ancient Hawaii. So, and we're losing those things as time goes on more and more. And that's actually the girl bowling the rock, the coconut, or it looks like a rock. Now they actually have you bowl a rock, not a coconut anymore. And it's a picture here that actually says you scored 2 more to go, and you need 3 to actually win the game. A lot of research has been done around this, and me being a pseudo geek in working in science, it's the coolest thing is to actually see the applications in science, because a lot of the things they put in there now are around you. Oops, that's not the right slide. Give me 1 second here. I just want to make sure the right video comes up. And it is. Are there any questions? There we go. So here, LearnAR is looking at augmented reality, and the coolest thing about this is people are looking at the scientific applications of it. We showed medical aspects earlier, right? But imagine if you had a way to actually utilize this with our kids, where they hold up a marker, and all of a sudden, their whole circulatory system, or the organ structures, their skeletal, their muscular system, something pops up on the screen instantly, and our kids can see this in a 3D environment, right? Now you're looking at the heart. And these are just simple markers, you know? And now we talk about assessment. Now the coolest thing about this, imagine authentic assessment at that point. We talk about geometry, spatial recognition, instantly, yes or no. Imagine our kids that would be able to do this. And now this is my application to this, is in the e-learning environment. When you're trying to engage a kid that's sitting behind a computer that's not in your classroom with you, you can't see their reactions. But it's the cool thing that you can actually see all of the different things that you're working with these kids in that environment. And that's the coolest thing about it. You know, it's amazing to me to see some of the stuff that's coming up little by little and as time goes on now, and where this is going to go in the future for our kids. So, you know, and it's wild to watch the videos that people are coming up with. How cool is this? You know, people, you forget which bones are in your arm? There you go. You know, you have the radius, the ulna, the tricep, bicep, and the muscles that actually went around those bones. Chemistry. This is cool in learning AR, but the coolest thing about chemistry right now are called element blocks, and it's called Elements 4D by Dacry. D-A-Q-R-U-R-I, and you can actually put them together and actually, and if I had a video and the ability to show the video, I could have showed it with the augmented reality when you hit the 2 icons together, so you could have sodium NaCl for chlorine, and actually hit them together, and it forms NaCl, and it shows you what the element looks like when you bang the 2 blocks together. It's really cool. Virtual Geiger counter. Wild. I mean, the applications of this now are becoming more and more that they're actually truly applicable to the world we live in and utilizing this for our kids. And the authentic assessments that kids can have as to whether or not they truly are learning in a virtual environment and in an e-learning environment. So I think it's really cool for a lot of our kids to see where this is going. And for me as a teacher, it's really cool. Languages, do you pronounce something correctly? Do you pick the words correctly? Things like that. So it's pretty cool to see where it's going. And I don't know if I'm changing some people's minds yet, but looking at where we are here in the future, you can start using augmented reality right now for BlackBerries and iPhones and Androids. It's more, honestly, Android and iPhone than it is for BlackBerry. Unfortunately, they're not many things out there right now. Now, many of you guys have seen, the focus around energy and clean energy now. This is one of the coolest ones I use, and I do this with teachers. And watch what he does. So when you blow into the microphone on the computer as you have the smart grid up, right, and as kids can understand then utilizing wind energy, right, as you blow into the microphone, it actually then can be shown exactly what happens and how you can actually do this. And it's really cool when you start looking at it in the future of where things are going. This is from Iron Man, and I'll put this link in here as well. So place the comic book over your face and what happens? So you have an Iron Man mask on. And it's a commercial for LG. And it's funny because, more so as time goes on, we're going to have these interactive experiences with our paper and our products that come like this as time goes on. So this is the BMW video now coming up here as well. And let me put that up on the screen, and I'll put the link in there. And I think this is amazing. My brother-in-law is a mechanic, and this is the coolest thing ever for me for this, because it's the true real-world application of it. So how many of you guys would love to see this in some other way, shape, or form? I mean, Peggy wrote a great thing. You wouldn't have to spend months or years to train someone. I think you still have to have the training ability and the understanding of what is what, because it won't work with everything. But I think that the coolest thing about it is that for a do-it-yourselfer that wants to replace something on a part on something that breaks as on a slow appliance in your house, and you have to replace something, it's the instant application that you can utilize, not the glasses, but your phone, to look at it and it'll show you that diagram. So it's really cool. And if anybody in here is a Lego maniac like I am, I mean, my son, loves Legos, and I've been fortunate enough to work with Lego and LEAP, the advisory, program for years. And it's pretty cool when you can see things like this and actually see what's in the box before you build it. So that's one of the coolest things that I think is great, because you never know what it's going to look like and how big it's going to be actually as you build it. So I think that this is pretty cool. When you're in the Lego store, you can actually see this. You can actually download this app now for your phone, so you don't have to go over to the screen. You can actually use your phone actually at the Lego store yourself to actually see what's in the box. So those are some of the things, and those are other applications of looking at it right now. But we talked about Yelp. How many people in here, I don't know, use Yelp? I know I do whenever I travel to find different places. But if I can have it pop up on my phone and see where things are, make life a lot easier. Yelp hooking to my GPS helps sometimes, but other times I'm like, you know what? I can't find the restaurant I'm looking for, especially if I'm traveling somewhere. And it becomes an aggravation in trying to see where things are and what's happening and what's available around me. So if it came up where I'd actually just pick up my phone, held it up, and I could see what's on that block, that would be ideal for me. You know, Google goggles are getting there more and more. I don't know how many people in here have been able to use them and play with them. I have. For me, I'm not sold yet. They're pretty cool. But, you know, as time goes on, I'm sure they're going to get to be more and more prevalent in the real world. Wiki, too, we talked about earlier. You hold your phone up and it gives you information about what's around, right? So we talk about this tourism and what's around for different things as well. This is the last video that's actually here, and I'm not going to show you the whole video just because it's long, but I will put the link in here, and if you want to see it. So it's actually all about traveling and tourism and about what's going on in other places. So when you visit other places, it's another 3-minute video and stuff like that. So, you know, it's actually talking about what you can see when you travel in other places and see other places. It's pretty cool, you know, and I think that for me would be amazing as a person that loves to travel and loves to see the world. But kids can actually experience this anywhere you're around. Now, these are the applications that take you to the real world. Virtual keyboards, right? And these are what is applicable for us today. When you're looking at this, imagine having a way to actually project on your hand how you want to manipulate something. A pause button, a start button, a music player, that's going to be in your goggles or in something else that you can actually, as opposed to talking to it, you just actually say, you know, put up the keyboard, put up what it is, whatever it's going to be. And this is some of the stuff that people think that's far-fetched, and I honestly don't think it's far-fetched. I think that this stuff is going to be prevalent really quickly. You know, there's a couple of other programs that I wanted to mention as I was going through. There's one called WordLens, right? And it actually translates instantly on the fly printed words from another language. So if you're ever traveling, I think it's $7.99, so it is a pricey app, right? And you can actually then utilize WordLens and actually, it's WorldLens, and it'll actually allow you to actually instantly change from English to Spanish, from English to French to German, whatever language is around. So it's really, really cool. The other thing is, this is what we talked about earlier, and the aspect of putting something like this into your eye, right? It's like in that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, and I was going to show that little video clip, but you know, you could pull it up. And this is what would pop up in front of you. All of those different things that you would be able to see. What's happening here? What's the weather? What's the traffic? Who am I talking to on the phone, or what were they saying? What were my text messages? I know one of the aspects of my iPhone that I love is that when I'm riding my bicycle, right, I can actually not have to worry about answering a phone call, a text message or an email. And if I'm waiting for something to come in, if a text comes in, I can just say, Siri, read it to me. And the aspect is there now on the Droid as well. And it'll read the message to me. It'll say who it's from, and you can just say reply. And people don't realize a lot of this stuff is getting to be there more and more. And as time goes on, it'll get to be where you can actually utilize it and see it in front of you. You know, so this is pretty cool. We all know about RFID tags. So the tags that are actually in something when you walk out of a store and it sets off the alarm. So imagine if they had built-in ones into your clothing, and you actually were able to actually pull these up, and you actually had an RFID tag in your clothes. Some woman sees another girl walking, she points her phone at her, and she can actually take a snapshot or look at it, and it would tell her by the RFID tag that was built in or by a marker that you can actually see where it was, what it cost, and who made the jacket. I think one step further, it would be great if they actually did like Google Shopper, and it tells you the places that are in the area and which one is the cheapest. That would be the coolest thing if that was available. Excuse me. So The future applications for shopping are there as well, and for commerce. Now, if you take it one step further than this, you use social networking, avatar reality. And if you look at the questions, the things that are on here, it's funny. But you have a registered sex offender on there. He actually drinks Coca-Cola. He actually is slutty ex-girlfriend that's on there as well. And you could buy this shirt and everything else. It's funny, but you know what? This is where it's going. Is if things are able to be able to keep on going the way they are, we'll have these things in the next 5 years. That a lot of our markers and a lot of our different things will be in the environments we live in. And people don't think about where this has come from, but to go back to RFID tags, when I was in New York City, and this is going back to 2001, 2002, when the small school movement started, we couldn't figure out a way to keep kids. We were sharing a cafeteria and sharing a gymnasium, but every school in the building of 1,000 students now became the next year 4 250-kid schools with 4 different names, 4 different ID cards, 4 different principals, and they had to stay in their respective school on that floor during the school day unless they were supposed to be somewhere else. We embedded RFID tags into the back of their ID cards, and then we put sensors on all of the doors that left to the stairwells where there weren't security guards. And we started realizing, the kids, it took them a couple of months to figure out how they were getting caught every time they wanted to go to one of their friends. That's not too far away from where we are today and how we're being tracked with all of our data and our use and everything else like that. And that will eventually end up in the marketplace that we talked about for things like this. It's just one of those things where it's going. That's the future of where social networking and AR is going. Kids are born into technology. When you talk to Mark Prinsky, digital native, digital immigrants, I actually don't think digital natives any longer even apply. Because the digital native that's born today that utilizes technology as a 4 or 5 or 2-year-old, their experience can be dramatically different the next year, the next month, because technology is changing so fast, looking at the laws of how things are switching and how things, it used to be 18 months. We had a new form of technology come out. It started out as 2 years, and then it eventually went to 18 months. It's roughly a year now till a major technological shift is coming out in new tools or new utilizations of those tools. So for me, it's pretty cool to see where this stuff is going and where it's going to end up in the future. I honestly don't know, but I just want to thank everyone for taking the time. These are all of where things came from. It's on the end of the slide, so you can look at the videos that are here and some of the work that's here, and I cited references and some of the actual videos that were pulled from YouTube as well. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to actually answer any questions or anything like that. I'll post the list up on my website, and I'll shoot it off to Amy and to Steve as well. Just some of the ones that I talked about were Erasma, World Lens, Google Goggles, Wikitude. Some of the websites are AR sites, and ZooBurst. And somebody mentioned one earlier, which was the AR flashcards. I don't know who it was, but AR flashcards are the coolest thing ever. You print them out, you actually download the app, and when you point your iPad or your iPhone at the icon of the little picture of the letter A, an alligator will pop up and make a sound. And it has the whole alphabet. It's really, really cool. And it's free. Most of the things are free at this point right now. But as time goes on, I'm sure they won't be. I saw that one of the apps, so AR flashcards is free, but AR Planets is not. It's $2.99. So it's amazing to see what's going on. My next speaking engagement, I honestly don't know. I'm working on a couple of books right now that'll be published in iTunes and iBooks in the next couple of weeks. Actually, I'm going through final edits right now. And as soon as I can, I'll definitely let you know. But you can check my website, and it's jeffpiontek.com. I constantly blog, and I'm on Twitter. It's Jeff_Piontek on Twitter. So I really appreciate it. And if there's any other questions or anything like that, thanks, Amy. I appreciate it from the website up. If not, aloha. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope you had a great time. I can't wait to hear the next keynote, Julian. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll see you guys in there.
Thanks so much, Jeff.